Welcome everyone to today's 45-minute cameras on ILTA YouTube video entitled Diversity in eDiscovery. It's no longer a man's world. I'm your moderator, Ravan, Roddy. I am currently the eDiscovery manager at Zoetis, and I am thrilled to be joined by our four distinguished guests. Joy Murao, the founder, CEO of Practice Aligned Resources. Joan Washburn, Director of Legal Support Services at Holland and Knight. Kaitlin Chapman, Senior Project Manager at Epiq Global, and Candi Smith, eDiscovery Analyst at the Walt Disney Company. Welcome, Joy, Joan, Candi, and Kaitlin. And before we get into our discussion, just want to make sure that we are clear that the views that we express today on this recording do not reflect our employers. Everyone agree? Okay. So I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to allow each of you to give a 30-second try, a 30-second introduction of yourself. So Joy, what can you give us? Give us your 30-second introduction to who you are.
I've been in practice support since 1994. I had the great fortune to working with a few ladies on this call right now. I basically own my own company now, doing what I've been doing for 30 years, just helping integrate technology into the practice of law.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joan.
I'm Joan Washburn. I'm, as mentioned by Ravan, I am the Director of Legal Support Services at Holland and Knight. I've been with Holland and Knight since 2006. They hired me 1 week before the changes to the federal rules dropped. And I've been leading the department there. I have a co-leader now, Manfred Gabriel, but I have been director since 2007. So long time.
Yes, thank you. Candi?
Well, hi, I'm Candi Smith. I'm currently at the Walt Disney Company, loving it. And I've been in this space for a long time, since 2000. I started in tech, moved into lit support. I worked for at least 5 AM 100 law firms and a couple of corporations now, and I am still at it and loving it.
Awesome. And last but not least, Kaitlin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kaitlin Chapman. Thanks for having me. I'm a senior project manager at Epiq. I've been in the industry about 15 years. I've been with Epiq for 7 years, and my previous vendor about 7 or 8 years. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you all for being here. So we have some really great questions. So I'm just gonna jump in. What is your eDiscovery origin story? So Joan, can you jump in and tell us what your eDiscovery origin story is?
Sure. I have sort of a funny one in that I was working, I had been most of my career working as a writer and a teacher. And as I just mentioned to you guys, my son was suddenly taller than me. I realized I needed to make some real money. So I decided, what can a writer do that makes money other than write and make a bestseller? And I determined that working in a law firm would help. So I started my career there. I was at a regional firm in the Northeast. I had just moved from California, and I was sitting in my cubicle at the time, and an attorney, he was an employment attorney, I could tell you his name, but I won't, stuck his head out and said, "Does anybody know what the F a TIF is?" And I raised my hand and said, "I do." And that was partly because as a writer, I had a kind of a side gig, creating web pages and print advertisement and other things. This was around 2004 or so. And so that truly was my launch into the eDiscovery world. Because I knew what a TIF was, I became at this law firm, the summation expert. And I dealt with all of the, everybody's productions and kind of taught myself all of that stuff. And then as the things evolved, I had another role there. I was paralegal, I should say, at the law firm, not in lit support, but more from the legal side than the tech side. And another aspect of my role was to do research to find interesting topics. And one of the decisions, it was one of the Zuba Lake decisions, and we presented on it at at a litigation breakfast that they would do every other week. And that was that kind of got me, people starting to come to me, to ask me questions about what constituted, nobody used ESI at the time, but what constituted electronic discovery and things like that. So I kind of became a self-taught expert in the field. I consider myself one of the original gangsters, I think there's a few of us around still. And it was a very different world back then, because almost everybody was self-taught. There weren't a lot of guardrails in place. And we gradually had to, sort of develop the professional approach to eDiscovery. And, a lot of people dropped out because that wasn't what they wanted. And some people grew and some people didn't. So that's my story.
So your story, it all began with a tiff. I love it.
I'll begin.
Joy.
And a swear word.
And a swear word. Yeah, we can't forget that swear word. Joy, can you tell us your origin story, please?
Well, it does include a tiff, and it does include swear words. So,
I like it already.
Yeah. So actually, I was just counting, Joan. I was like, oh, I started 12 years before the federal rules started. I'm like, is that right? Am I doing my math right? Okay. So yes, with my starting in 1994, it actually, to me, resembles still where we are. But luckily, I was hired out of paralegal school, undergrad paralegal school, thinking you'd go to law school, just wanting to get some legal experience before you try to take the LSAT and all that. So for me, it was actually a female boss. My manager was looking for someone that could bridge that gap of legal and IT. So then it kind of boiled down to legal and not scared of IT. Okay, boiled down to legal and willing to learn IT, right? I mean, it was kind of interesting because that's where we are to this day, I feel, is trying to bridge that gap between the two practices. But I started right out at a Melviny, and I really fell in love with it. I fell in love with being a problem solver. So again, my TIFF story is it started with scanning. In 1994, I just remember reading bids, RFPs of just books on books of trying to compare what vendor charges X and Y for scanning OCR. And OCR back then was over 25 cents a page. It was crazy. But we had big coding shops. So we actually were I didn't do data entry, but we had people who were doing data entry. And for me, there was a person who had to take the data from the coding people and put it into the database. And that's kind of the gap I filled from the beginning. And the cuss words would be mine because I really didn't understand what's going on. I was an English major. I wasn't technical, but as I think for me, my characteristics were about being a good listener, wanting to help people, and really connecting that. I would say being brave. I think a lot of our colleagues in the beginning, like you said, kind of starting out from the wild, wild west, we all had to be self-taught because there was no school. I really relied on my vendors who were doing all these different specific things. I mean, we had a vendor just for coding, vendor just for scanning, a vendor just for microfiche back then, which, whenever I have a corporation now, I'm like, I know what a microfiche is. Like, I got this. So for me, it was very lucky stumbling into that the industry needed something, and there was someone who was willing to take a chance on a newbie who had the potential. And I think, again, that's where we are now.
Awesome. So some bridge building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Kaitlin.
Sure. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my eDiscovery story, I like to think of it as eDiscovery found me. I happened to be out of college and did not study anything with technology or legal. I studied anthropology, and I just so happened to be working across the street from an eDiscovery company, and I had met some people there, and I started at a very entry-level position, quality assurance analyst. So at the time, I was just QCing all of the work, right? All the processing, productions, preloading. So it's been an interesting journey. It's definitely changed and evolved over the years. So yeah, I've been in ever since.
Nice, nice. across the street. It just happened across the street. Candi.
Yeah, so God, you kind of look back and you say, wow, that's the craziness of eDiscovery and how we got here. But I'm loving all the stories. I started out after high school. I went to school actually for nursing to become an RN. And they went on strike, and I was like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. So I ended up going into the help desk arena, and I excelled there. I really loved helping people. I guess that was part of the nursing thing. This, computers, bodies, same thing, right? It's all crazy, intricate stuff. So I did that. I was in help desk for a little while, and then I started getting bored with just software. Software didn't change back then. It wasn't like now where, you wake up in the morning and your whole, GUI is gone, right? Or just changed. You had to really have people, do a bunch of upgrades and everything. So you kind of were aware before things were done. But the software is just a software. Microsoft was Microsoft, so I was doing that, and I just got kind of bored, and I ended up one day being in Joy's world and at Latham, and I came from O'Malveny. I was an analyst there, an enterprise application analyst. I did the first BlackBerry server for O'Malveny, so that was interesting. And then when I jumped into Joy's world, it hasn't been the same ever since. It's been a crazy ride, and I've learned a hell of a lot of stuff about all kinds of different things. I've never had a boring day in my life. The technology has come so far, and you turn around and there's this one more thing to learn, one more thing you need to know, one more, new technology just came out, and how is that going to affect our business? So so my beginnings, I'm a very curious person, and everything has led me to where I'm at today, because that curiosity for me has allowed me to, really dig deep into this career.
Awesome origin story. Wonderful. So we're going to actually lead back off with you, Candi. Tell us, what barriers of advancement have you encountered throughout your career?
Well, so what I just said about going through nursing, I never finished school. I never went through college, and so that was kind of one of the barriers that I faced, or in my head, I thought it was a big deal. And sometimes I would, sort of feel that was reason for maybe management not doing certain things that I thought I was capable of doing. But, sometimes it's, based on somebody who's already gone to college, they want somebody else, because they've gone through it. They want somebody else that has gone through it to get reap the benefits of different things. So I felt that was kind of like, one of the things in my career that were a barrier for me. I haven't had a lot of barriers in the way of learning. People around me have been able to see that I'm a learner, and as well as a teacher, but I really enjoy learning. And for me, I feel like I have that champion moment when I've figured it out, or I've learned it, especially like right now, I'm moved to another job, and I'm learning, and I'm just people don't understand why I'm so excited, because for me, that's a great thing for me to learn. But the other thing that I've had in the past too is that, of course, being a woman, being a minority, it's not easy. My culture of how I was raised, like I tell my boys all the time, I tell them, I said, as you go through life, remember, we weren't all raised the same. So, some people might do things the way you don't know why they do it that way. But, that's a cultural thing. I would have done it differently. But you have to accept that. And some people are not so, like, they're very monofocal with their culture, and they feel like they have to, do what they know how to do, and they won't go to anybody else's culture and say, how do you feel about this? Or, what does that make you believe in, you know, any kind of ask would have been great in a lot of my career. So I think one of the barriers was cultural for me, and also being a woman.
Certainly, I think we all can relate to that question. And actually, Kaitlin, your barriers of advancement that you've encountered.
Yeah, so agreeing with Candi on this, you know, I've had to kind of work my way up the ladder the past 15 years. I'm always had to just fight for my career, always had to prove myself. And a lot of those challenges have been with male leaders. I would say, I don't even know, 95% of them. So when it is a woman leader, I find that it looks different, it feels different. And mostly in that communication, I feel like women leaders are just more open, more empathetic. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had some great male leaders too, but when there's a woman leader, there's that connection that I've found that really makes a difference. So that's kind of been my big picture.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. Joan.
So I want to preface my statements by saying I actually come from a place of privilege. All right. So there's certain privilege that I have enjoyed in my career that I think women of color and you know, other minorities may not have experienced. So, and there's another aspect to that privilege, in that when Holland and Knight was first starting its eDiscovery function, it was led by an attorney. And because of my background more from the legal side as opposed to the tech side, everybody else on the team was a technologist. I had this particular partner's ear in a way that other people didn't, which is why I think, and I misspoke, I was actually made director on Valentine's Day in 2008. So it wasn't 2007, it was 2008. So I think so I had, I had the privilege of my whiteness, and I had the privilege of having the ear of leadership at the time. Now, that is not to say that I have not had challenges through my career. And I do think in general, the challenges have been twofold. One, often being the only woman. I mean, I've sat on tech advisory boards where I was the only woman. I have been in so many meetings where I am the only woman. I still, to this day, people, you know, I think I mentioned the other day, someone patted me on the head. I'm short too. I'm only 5 feet tall. So that's, you know, I think people do things like that, but they wouldn't do it to a man, even a 5 foot tall man. Right. So I do think that often having I think that having a encompassing approach has helped my career, but it not being hard technology. Like, I have to prove myself even with people on my team. So we'll talk a little bit more about demographics, but I have engineers on my team, and I darn well better know what Python is when I talk to them, right? You know what I mean? Like, I can't go in saying like, oh, isn't that a snake or something like that, you know? So it's definitely a still a challenge to be a woman in technology. And I think that we cannot elide the complexity that brings to all of our careers. But I want to say that I have had privilege in my career. I was, you know, but I fought for it. And the other thing is, and Candi, I think this goes to your point about curiosity, and I've always had a growth mindset, and I also have never taken no for an answer. That's kind of a, you know, I'm not a person that says that just, if you tell me no, I'll try 7 different ways to get you to yes. So, and that has been, I think, to the point where, you know, some people would turn and walk down the other way down the hall when they saw me coming, because I don't take no for an answer. But that's, you know, all of those types of things. And also the other thing, you know, as eDiscovery evolved, and more people in my position in particular. I mean, I am co-lead now with a partner in the firm where we went to IT for a while and it became an IT function back in the, back on the practice side. And most people in my position at this point are attorneys. And so that has also been a challenge for me because I'm not an attorney. And for the longest time, I was it. Just like, my origin story, people started to come asking me, for advice about how to comply with requirements. I would always say, I can't give you legal advice. I'm not an attorney. But I was the person in Holland and I most relied on until about 2019 or so when we restructured. But so the being a woman in tech and being a non-attorney in legal are two barriers to growth. You have to have two barriers to success for some people. You have to have a growth mindset. You have to and Candi, you said this on our planning meeting. So it resonated with me. Like you have to trust that you have to know that you are as smart as you are and that you are often the smartest person in the room, regardless of whether you're a woman or an attorney or whatever. So
thank you so much for that and for your transparency, even speaking to your privilege, and I can definitely relate to all of the barriers, being a woman of color, being a woman, not being an attorney, constantly having to prove yourself, to prove, that you can be there. And I've had people say, don't you know you're great? I'm like, look, I know I'm the bomb. You need to catch on, and having those people really, like I've had somebody act like they discovered me and I'm like, no, I've been here. But we're at the halfway point. I know, Joy, you have a quick. Can you give us a quick follow-up? And then
I just want to say, to wrap that up and thank you, Ravan, is, again, because Joan and Candi, I totally, again, it resonates with me, but being your authentic self and believing in yourself, I think are the key things too. As a woman, I personally have a high empathy, but then again, that could be a barrier because at some point in some level, when you're speaking to, upper management where you need to be a little bit more or less empathetic on some of these decisions, you can actually be thought of a certain way, like, oh, let's not ask this person because they're going to obviously choose this route because they're going to want to keep all these people we have to cut or whatever that is. So kind of making sure you understand yourself and make sure that you can separate from that when you need to and be authentic, but yet find your voice and believe in yourself and you can do you can make those hard decisions and still retain your values and your goals.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Joan, we're going to come back to you. We're going to pivot back to you. Current department demographic, you had mentioned that before. Can you speak to your current demographic?
Yes. So I have a very large team and we have probably about 80 people altogether on the team, many of whom are document reviewers. So we have our eDiscovery department, we have our operations, we have what we call workflow design and automation, which is sort of our software design and development department, and then we have our document review. And we are about evenly allocated in terms of male and female in leadership. There are more, slightly more male leaders on the team. And there are, but we have I think we've done a good job of putting females in charge of the hard science, right? So the head of our workflow design and automation team is Christy Wivsar. She is brilliant and wonderful at her work and not someone that many people might have thought to put in this position, but I knew she could do it. And so, at this point where we are, we have people, many men and women of color, lots of different ethnicities, Asian, Latino, Black, I'm trying to think, India, people from India. And so I feel, the way that we got there though was by making a conscious choice, right? Because at a certain point, sometimes you just get your head down and you need to hire and you're hiring someone and like, oh, this guy's good, let's make him an offer. And at a certain point, I realized that we had hired 8 white males in a row. Not consciously, not going out and saying like, okay, only white males can do this job, and but I started to write, so when I realized that, I went back and I looked at resumes, and we weren't getting resumes of people of color, of different ethnicities, women. We were only getting white, resumes from white males.
Mhm.
So we needed to have hard conversations with our recruiters to say, we want you to source from a much more diverse pool of people. And I want in every package, I want there to be a diverse pool. If I engage you to find someone for me, you need to be looking for diverse people, because, we're busy, right? We're going to rely on you to bring us the candidates, because let's face it, I mean, most of us rely on recruiters to augment our teams, right? And so we did have these hard conversations, and they took it to heart, and we were able to really source some excellent people who were, men and women, but from a more diverse pool of people. And I have always felt that the team is stronger for that. One of the things that we do is we have we call it designed alliances, right? Which is a way that we communicate with each other. And so different teams, we do it cross-functionally, we do it within teams where people come together, decide how they want to communicate, what their approach will be to a project. And, it's part of leading with empathy, that all voices are heard. And I think, that has resonated with people. We've had I've had people on my team, even on the document review team, which is largely temps, but we have people who have been with us since we launched our review center, which was in 2017, and they've been with us for since 2017. We've offered some of them full-time jobs, but they want to remain temps for the flexibility, but they're still with us because we've given them a voice at the table. We've made them feel heard and as part of a team. And so we really have tried to develop, diversity of human diversity, diversity of thought, diversity of background, again, to Candi's point about culture and those types of things. And all of those things make for a better sauce in my mind.
Right.
So having that be part of,
Yeah, that's great. So diversity of thought, being conscious of diversity and how it looks, and not just from your department, but even when you're pulling people into your department. We have to train our minds to think outside of our norm. And that's why it's called unconscious bias, right? Because oftentimes it's not intentional. It's just we're very focused in on what's in our immediate sphere of influence, right? Kaitlin. So we have, I'm just gonna say Caitlin's gonna give us her department demographic. We have 2 more questions, and we're almost at like the 10-minute mark. So I don't want to rush anyone, but let's keep in mind, because I want everyone to be heard so that we can finish. Kaitlin, can you give us your current department demographic?
Sure. Yeah. I'll be quick. I think from our department, my team, we have a big group. I think it's pretty diverse. When I was reflecting on this question and taking a look at my team and what it looks like, I do think it's a good mix of men and women, different backgrounds, different ages, different cultural backgrounds, ethnicity. And then I do also think, though, when you take a step back and look at this, what that looks like as you go up the chain, it looks a little different. That same diversity does not continue up the ladder. And that's a big thing, to be seen in that. And I think it is shifting in a way, and I think it needs to shift some more. So
Yes, diversity up the ladder, like that's a session in and of itself, right?
in and of itself.
That's a very, very powerful observation. And I think we all can attest to that we've seen that, throughout our careers. I'm going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to ask you to lead, Kaitlin. Can you define equity or give your advice of what equity looks like?
Sure. Again, reflecting on this question, you know, I think oftentimes we're kind of put in this box of, do you check off this list, right? But that doesn't always kind of bring in your background, your experience, who you are, your empathy, and you know, when your emotional state, your verbal communication. And I think Joy had mentioned this, right? Like if you show you're too emotional, maybe that's kind of frowned upon, but I think that really just shows emotional intelligence, and that does have a place at the table, for women, for our group, for our, you know, our industry. So yeah, that's my point.
I do like that, because oftentimes as women, we are made to feel like our, you know, being empathetic and being nurturing, like those, oh, you're too girly. Don't be so girly, be stoic. And, you know, those are the things that make us unique, and it gives us a unique perspective, right? And also a unique way to lead. I've had I haven't had a lot of women leaders, but the ones that I have been awesome, and they have really planted and invested their time and effort into me to grow. So I appreciate that. I would like to ask Monique if you can tell us what the Canadian makeup of eDiscovery is.
Thanks. So I was just listening to all of this, and I think this is an amazing crew that we have here discussing all this. But I'm just saying that in Canada, we have a little bit of a different demographic, and ours is more geared toward women in this space. There are many more paralegals and law clerks that are taking up that realm, and there are much less men in our space in Canada. And I don't know why that necessarily translates, but I think just because in those firms, people were looking for somebody like Joy, like Joan, like Candi, like Kaitlin, who were like, oh, I have a little bit of information about, you know, technology, but I also am really interested in the law part of it. And I just, you know, bridge those kinds of gaps and things. So it's a very different makeup. On my own team, I have 5 people on my team and I have 1 male. But
Oh.
yeah, a very different look from everybody else's. But I mean, we're also trying to find, like, he's a champion of the women on our team. And we are always actively looking for that champion in our law firm to find that person who can be like, yes, these women get it. Let's find another woman, and be intentional about finding that woman to promote her to do something else. So.
Right. We have the capability. We're showing we have the capability. We have the skills. We have the education. We can dominate. We can add to this space. We are value adds.
Very much so.
I really like you. I really like that you brought that up, Monique. Thank you so much. So we're talking about defining equity. Would anyone else?
So I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Hold on. Sorry, Joan. You want to go?
No, I was just, okay, go ahead.
Well, you know, I was just thinking about it because, you know, the equality and the equity issue has always been where people think it's kind of like the same, right? And over the years, I've been in situations where, you know, maybe it's not even a man woman kind of thing. Sometimes it is, but people have lives. People have children. People have husbands. Some people don't. Some people don't have children. Some people don't have. They have a different kind of view on what the office should look like. You know, having parties, going out after work for drinks, things like that. You don't have the same FaceTime that you would have if you're a mother of, you know, children, and you have to go home, and other people can just go out and go hang out with the boss. And that has been a really sore point for me, because you know, people should, when you're in the office, we should all be treated the same, you know, regardless if we spent, you know, the last 2 nights hanging out with one of the bosses or something. You know, it shouldn't really matter. I think that a smart leader sees the person for the capabilities, and that's basically it, right? And also will take those capabilities and nurture them. That's the perfect world for me. You know, that's where my space, that's where when I see the injustice of that around my work world, that's when I get frustrated. You know, it's like we all are here to learn. We're all here to be a team. We're all here to take on the same challenges, and we're all here to, you know, celebrate whenever we can. But it shouldn't go outside of that. It really should be, you know, a safe space for everybody to be working and enjoying their job, because like the, you know, as far as like even with pay and stuff like that, I never really get into that with, you know, he makes more than I do, and you know what, I have a different life, you know, I have a different road, the way I travel, and I'm happy as a clam to get paid for something that I love to do. You know, they say you never have a work day in your life if you're doing what you love, right? So I love what I do, and I appreciate anyone who would look at me and say, hey, you know what, Candi, I know you got this, you know, which I've had some people that have said that. That's why I think I'm where I'm at. So
I'd just like to speak a little bit, if you don't mind, Ravan, I'd like to
So
speak a little
enjoy,
bit
you
to
can
the
go
to
after
the
her.
to the pay equity part, because I appreciate your point on that, Candi, but I actually think the pay equity is incredibly important. And as a person in leadership, I have, I mean, 3 years ago, so you know, the way people come in, you kind of make an offer to them based on what they made at their former thing. We decided, no, that is not fair, because men have typically been paid more. And so, again, not intentionally, but all of the women on our team were paid less than the men, regardless of their experience, regardless of their contribution. And so we made a conscious decision to bring everyone to market. So that year, some people got a $40,000 raise, right? Because there was that sort of, you know, inequitable pay. And I, even though I am, you know, oldish, I don't know, I am not a millennial.
seasoned.
I'm seasoned. I'm not a millennial. I do believe in discussing pay and people having that kind of open discussion with it. Because if you don't, you cannot gauge what you're worth. And it's important, and that means that someone else is always driving what you're worth. And let's face it, I love my job too, but I do it for money. I don't do it for joy. I do it for money. So if I, you know,
used to
if
do it
I
for
was
joy.
going to do something for joy, and I don't mean Joy who's joining us here, that would
You used to do it for joy.
it would
Don't
be.
get me wrong, Joy. I mean, don't get me wrong, Joan. I know what I'm worth. Okay.
Yeah,
But
no, I understand.
I'm just saying, it's like, I'm not going to compare myself to the guy next to me, but I know my worth, and I
I'm just saying you should.
Yeah. Oh,
saying
yeah,
you
definitely.
And I was
Joy.
just gonna add to that, to wrap those two concepts up, is number, it's two-sided when you define equity and equitable, right? In that, number one, you need to know yourself, you need to understand your own competencies and understand your own worth, and speak that and voice that. And again, if the employer you're at won't have that conversation or won't accept your explanation of your worth, I mean, be honest to yourself too, and accept the constructive feedback that may come back, that this is why in here is where you need to be in order to get to that band of pay, you know. But if that's all said and you still feel it, then maybe it is time to move and find that employer that is going to be right for you and the right fit and alignment. But going back to being very intentional from an employer perspective, like you said, Joan, we went through and did competency modeling. We did levels. We did, okay, this is what you have to do. And if you meet this, you're this level. So that it's kind of lockstep, just like the lawyers being first year, second year, third year, fourth year, same kind of concept and mentality towards our roles of lockstep of these are the progression steps. And again, being very proactive from a management perspective and saying, this is what you have to do. And if you're not doing this, then this is why you're here. And so, or maybe not here, but again, as an individual, recognize that and look at that and be honest to yourself and just define what your values are so that you can walk to that table and help define what's equitable and equity to you individually. Because as a manager, I can help define it, but I need it to be both sides of the table.
Yeah, thank you for that. So what I hear is like self-advocacy. You have to be able to, you know, be willing to advocate for yourself. Someone told me that you are the only one that's in charge of your career. You. We have 5 minutes remaining. I would love to get to this last question. And the question is, what do you think can be done to ensure more equity for women in this profession? I will say that as a Black woman, oftentimes we are viewed as the workhorses. We're very reliable. And so the way we are viewed in terms of elevation and promotion is kind of non-existent. And in a lot of jobs, I think the last job that I was at, every time I wanted to get promoted, I had to leave. And so, think about the value, the knowledge I could have added to all of those places had they had the vision to see, let's invest in her, let's keep her, but I had to leave to grow. So this is our last question. I'm going to start off with Kaitlin. What do you think can be done to ensure more equity for women in this profession?
So it's a really good question. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is just women supporting women and women helping women and those opportunities for women to connect and share, our knowledge, our growth, our experience, and defining what leadership looks like for women. It does look different compared to men, in my opinion. And it's, one thing, when you look at those differences, I think women come together as a community, as a village. They do reach out their hand to help each other. So I think that's important.
Thank you for that, Joan.
I think that training.
Oh.
Joan, 10 seconds. I think training is important. That mindset needs to be trained. Joy has a trained. She's a training. She's a model for that, right? Her PAR group and her PAR concept and everything like that is about training people to be just that. So go ahead, Joan.
So the thing that I was going to say actually ties in nicely with what you just said. We can't just say, oh, men are like this and women are like that, right? We need to focus our leadership training, and this is what we have done in our team, leadership training, to have people lead with empathy, to have people see the full human being. And so, if you're going to be a manager on our team, you go through leadership training that teaches leading with empathy. It teaches coaching habits. It teaches ways to try to, to emphasize. So that is sort of our approach at Holland and Knight, and it's helped. We have empathetic male leaders and empathetic female leaders, and
Awesome.
It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Joy. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. Joy.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Monique, I want to hear from you, so get ready. Joy.
But I think like Kaitlin was saying, the help women supporting each other. I think for a long time, there was only one seat at that table for a woman. And I think that there were a lot of sharp elbows as I was climbing that ladder. And I'm like, I'll build my own little ladder. It's okay. Let's just go together, everybody. And it took a long time. And I feel now that that's where we're at. I really do feel this momentum, that the tone has changed, that women are looking back and handing an arm up. Women are jumping ladders and saying, I really don't even want this career anymore. I want to go over here. That the world has really opened up. And I think as a woman in this industry, I do think that it's not the same world it was 20, 25 years ago. And I'm just glad I don't have to play golf as much as I used to. I have arthritis now. So, but that was where we were at. I had to learn how to, smoke a cigar and have some whiskey. It's not like that anymore. And I'm just really proud that to be a part of this generation of women helping each other. So
Joy, you said something very important. And what came to me is we're no longer begging for the seat at the table. We're getting seats, but we're creating our own tables.
That's right.
And
our own table.
And I love it. Monique.
Just a quick one. I was just thinking, like, in our experience and in my experience anyways, I've always also found that male champion to help me to move ahead. And I found that one person has done a lot more for my career than some of the other people that I've ever worked with. And they've been great people, but they just haven't had that forethought, that knowledge to say, we're in a meeting and I'm not going to be the one that's taking the notes. You can take the notes. Right. It's okay. And it's okay
Yeah.
for me to feel like I can be at that table and voice my opinion and give some, feedback to the conversation that we're having and not feel intimidated sitting at that table in that boardroom going, I don't know what to say. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I think like that sort of thing also really helps. And I think that men have, for me, a responsibility to help the women that they are, working with, to be their champion, to help them, to recognize that there are people that are not going to be the first person to suggest them. So instead of suggesting Tony, why don't you suggest Joy or Kaitlin or Candi, right? Or Joan
Right.
or Ravan? Why not?
Why not? Why not? I tell you, I've just been blown away. I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of this panel. You ladies are awesome. I don't even think awesome is I'm almost speechless because it's just such a profound group of powerful women. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Kaitlin, Candi, Joy, Joan, Monique, and Frankie too, for your time and expertise that you shared today. We hope the audience that will soon view this will enjoy and proceed to like, comment on the recording, and also subscribe to ILTA YouTube and ILTA Voices. Everyone, have a great day. And thank you so much to all these wonderful panelists. And for our producer, Frankie Russell, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ravan.
Thanks,
Bye,
Ravan.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.